Hello everyone, it's Dr. Tina with Parent Like a Pro again. And I know that so far we didn't talk much about attachment parenting. So therefore, I'm so excited and happy to have McHale with us today, who is an expert in attachment parenting. And I just can't wait for her to share her story with us about how she became an attachment parenting expert. So, McHale, thank you for being with us.
Oh,
And
thank you.
it's such a pleasure having you.
Oh,
Uh,
it's so lovely to be invited. It's a real delight.
yeah, thank you. So, would you just tell us something about yourself and about your story? How did you ended up being attachment parenting expert and a mom, of course?
Well, it was incredibly unexpected, I can say, because I never considered myself to be particularly maternal. So I saw other mums, and they looked more cuddly and nurturing than I perceived myself to be. And I worked with teenagers, and I was comfortable working with them. I was a tour guide, so it was American teenagers. We'd go around Europe, and it was great fun. So when I was pregnant, I realized that the baby I was about to have was probably the first baby I was ever going to hold in my whole life, because I'd never been around babies.
Yeah.
And for some reason, when I was pregnant, I knew I wanted to have a home birth, and I knew I wanted to wear a sling, and I was sort of very trusting of my body. But I don't recall where that influence came from, because it didn't come from family or friends. And so I had my home birth, and I had this wonderful experience. And then my baby was so incredibly attached to me and wanted to be attached to me. And I would put her in a little bassinet next to the bed, and she would move to get close to me. And I didn't quite understand what was going on. And it's ludicrous looking back. But I realized one night, oh, so she just wants to be on me. Like, oh,
how come?
I really do want that.
Yeah.
So I was so sort of astonished at how strong her intent was. I couldn't leave the room, and she would cry, and it was very, very clear. So I Google, and I ended up reading about Dr. Sears, and then I read the continuum concept, and then it snowballed from there. And I read everything I could get my hands on around attachment. And for the next 4 years, I did everything that is recommended in order to have a really secure, beautiful, lovely attachment with my child. So I used the sling for years. The buggy I bought, I never used. The cot I bought never got used. So we bed shared, and I breastfed her. And after 4 years, I had this really clingy, seemingly insecure, terrified, deeply melancholic little girl. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do. Why is it not working? So I really had to question my decisions. And of course, a lot of those decisions aren't really culturally supported. So it was a very, very difficult time. And then just before her 5th birthday, she was diagnosed with 2 really rare heart defects. And suddenly everything made sense. That little still voice in my head that had been saying, she's not normal. Like, I knew that, but suddenly it made sense. So she had open heart surgery. She woke up from surgery, and the first thing she said was, now I can be a helicopter winch woman for the Coast Guard. And she was this outgoing, gregarious, confident, happy little girl. And her pediatrician said, I've never seen a child so changed emotionally or physically by surgery. And I realized then that everything I'd done and questioned, not only had it mattered, but that the stakes had been really high, that it had mattered so much that I had kept her close in the sling and kept her close in bed and breastfed her for 5 years. And she self-weaned 2 weeks after surgery. And I realized, she needed me in a way I didn't understand at the time. so it was a really interesting way of being introduced to attachment, and how you don't always see the fruits of your endeavors until much later on. And I think that's the case with all relationships. You know, we invest, and then we don't always see the magic of that at the time, but it will come.
Yeah. You're having such this wonderful maternal calm energy. I have to tell you that. I'm enjoying it. So tell me something, or maybe I have just two questions for the start. Could you go a little bit into, let's say, a definition of attachment parenting for all the parents out there that are not familiar with the concept? And I would like to then go to this voice of yours. How did you realize this voice, and how did you know how to react, which path to go, how to listen to yourself, or how did you know what your baby at that time was signaling, you know, to you? How did you listen? How did you connect to this child? How did you understand her? Because I think it has much to do with this attachment theory and everything. So,
well, it's a great question, and it's interesting how they tie together, because I always see attachment as relationship quality. And so in that way, we're all attachment parents. So it's, a lot of people think that you're either an attachment parent or you're not an attachment parent. And I think, well, every parent cares about their relationship. And it's, you know, how much consciousness and how much do we invest in that relationship, which is really how much do we care about the attachment. And so part of the way we care about attachment is by being really attuned, and it is about listening and responding sensitively in a timely way. And so some people think, you know, attachment parenting, you have to breastfeed, baby wear, bed share. Some people think, you know, you have to home educate, you have to eat organic, and it's like, no, like, you don't have to do any of those things. And, you know, and for some mothers, it's really distressing that they can't breastfeed, or they might, for health reasons, they can't bed share. And I always say, you don't have to do those things, because the possibilities for connection are infinite. We can create incredible bonds with our children simply by being responsive and sensitive. And so that little voice I had, you know, that I was tuning into my daughter, and I was reluctantly tuning in as well to that voice that said, she's not normal. I really didn't want to hear that voice, but it was there. I knew it. I couldn't not know it. And that's the thing, isn't it, with instinct, once you've known it, there's no going back. So that little voice is the voice that you'll hear, and you'll often question it, and you'll probably try and deny it, because all the outside conditioning might be telling you the opposite. But you'll know, because it will keep coming back, and it will creep up on you. It will be there when you wake up first thing in the morning. There'll be moments, and it's about listening to the child and looking at the bigger picture of what's happening with the child. So I could see that my child she was really fine and great sometimes, a lot of the time. But when that melancholy came through, even though I knew it would go away, I still knew there was something that wasn't right about that. You know, the waves of melancholy. Like, you know, melancholy is part of our design, and that's really fine, great, useful part of being human. But yeah, there'll be an inner knowing. It's stopping and listening.
Yeah, she was teaching you, you know, in a way. And in a way, you followed her to maybe to your purpose in life. I would say, becoming this.
She did.
Yeah.
She introduced me to attachment parenting.
What would you say? How can we connect to children? How can we understand them? I know you shared this beautiful concept of yours and your story, but maybe some parents out there are struggling with that. And this is a question I really like to ask all of our experts, because I know we are so different, all the theories are different, and there is in each and every theory, there's something for each and every one of us. So how do we understand them? How can we get connected and really in tune with them?
Well, I love that. I think what happens as parents is that we get so overwhelmed with just the responsibilities of life, but also trying to do the right thing for our child. And sometimes it's in the trying to do the right thing, we get caught up in our thinking about, whether we should do this or this and this. And it's when we get caught up in our thinking that we stop actually seeing the child in their experience. So parents will often say, my child has a tantrum and it's really embarrassing, and I'm at my wit's end, and why do they do that to me? And so they're caught up in their thinking about how others are going to see them, what they're doing to contribute to the tantrum, whether they've gone wrong in their parenting. And they're so caught up in that they've lost sight of the child who's actually really distressed and upset and needs somebody to be there for them. So I think one of the most powerful and beautifully simple things we can do as a parent is keep remembering that we're having separate experiences of our self-created realities. So our children are living in thought in the moment. We're living in thought in the moment. And if we can remember that our child's experience, there's nothing wrong with it. We don't have to be afraid of it. And we don't have to fix it either. And we don't have to get caught up in thinking that we have to be afraid or fix it. And just be the child. And the children are so superb at coming back to their well-being. So they'll have a tantrum, which is often a really healthy and appropriate response to something, and very normal neurologically.
Yeah.
Come back to their well-being. And if we can see them and just notice that, and look at the bigger picture of what's going on. I mean, it's so reassuring to know that our children's and our default setting is innate well-being.
Yeah.
And all that pressure and responsibility that we have to manage and control, and we have to make sure that they're doing the right thing or they're feeling the right way. We don't have to. All we have to do to create great connection is to create an environment that's really loving and encouraging and light-hearted and supportive and caring. And if we create that environment, then the connections will happen naturally. We don't have to force them, and we don't have to manage them. So it's like, all that responsibility we put on ourselves, we don't need to. We can just let go. Be in the relationship.
Yeah. But you mentioned creating this wonderful, loving environment for a child. And now, there are so many information out there about, how to create this beautiful environment for a child, and how to raise right from the start, in a way. And I see a lot of mothers particularly struggling because they are trying to create this environment, and they, in a way, don't know how, which ends up being, them being exhausted, because they think that they really need to play with the baby from the start on, and they are giving them all these colorful toys and everything, and they don't leave the baby alone for a minute, which is okay. I really understand that, but this making it right also, it ends up in this exhaustion. So my question would be, what do babies, let's begin at the beginning. So what do babies really need? What's this cozy, gentle, warm environment they need? What do they need? And do they really need to be amused so much? Do we really need to, connect in such a way that we are constantly kind of showing them something, playing with them? Or what do they really need?
Wow, lovely. I mean, they need us to listen to what they're really asking. And I think there's a reason children, when they're pre-verbal, because we have this period of time where we have to form a connection. We have to listen where there are no words. So babies are great at telling us what they need. And the fascinating thing that I practice all the time when I'm looking after other people's babies is I notice the conditioned part of me that's like, oh, I should show her something, or I should offer her this thing. And then I look at the child and I listen and I observe the child and I see, oh no, the child's really happy, sat on the sofa, not really doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, okay, like I can respond to that. She's really fine. And then if she wants to get off the sofa, she'll probably put her arms up to me and communicate to me, catch me, hold me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yes, it's fascinating because we know we read the information that says children need a loving and stimulating environment, and that's true. Like all those loving, stimulating interactions, all the great facial communication we give, that literally builds the baby's brain. So we have this huge, extraordinary responsibility building someone else's brain. But we can, I know that parents do put undue pressure on themselves, thinking that means all the time. Babies don't need that all the time. Babies love to just be left to observe the world. And I think it's our conditioned thinking that we have to be doing, when actually our child often just needs us to be. So it's kind of do less and be more. Be in our calm, reflective, observant state. Be that, and let the child bask in that.
Mm-hmm.
Create them like a lovely frequency or a lovely harmony, and let the child bask in that, rather than the doing, because it's almost like you're poking the baby to interact and engage.
Yeah. Let
the baby show you he or she wants to interact and engage, and then follow that, respond to that.
Yeah, that's what about and but there are lots of mothers that are in a way being alone for everything. They're at home, they need to do the washing, they need to cook, they need to do lots of things, and maybe they are in a way afraid that they don't, or subconsciously maybe they are experiencing fear that they won't just realize when the child will communicate something. So how do we in a way manage our time having a little baby and doing all this household, and really know how to connect, how to just be present when we're present? Do you have any technique, any any suggestions for our viewers, how to manage to do that, or how to, and just maybe just another sub question, how to in a way release this feeling of guilt that we are just being present and not doing anything to forcefully stimulate the baby and the baby's development.
Okay, well, I mean, there are so many parents who have so much to do and look after the baby, and so how do you do that? And so it's like navigating a river with the rapids. So when the rapids come, that's when your baby is saying, I really want you right now. I want you to engage with me. I want you to hug me and touch me and stroke me and play with me. And so you have to follow that. And then there'll be times when the baby's really fine for that not to happen, and they're doing their own thing, and they're quite happy to sit on the carpet and play with a ball. And then you can do what you need to do quietly nearby. But the key is do your thing quietly nearby, but do it in such a way that you're really genuinely peaceful about doing that thing quietly nearby. Because if you're not, the baby will feel it. So if you're feeling guilty or agitated and you keep checking and you're thinking, oh, I should be with the baby now, you're feeling that tension, that your baby will feel that, because they're living in the environment of our feelings. So it's really fascinating. You can almost experiment with this, and you can see how babies are different with different people, because they're feeling the other person's feelings. So a very calm, content adult can take a crying baby and the baby will calm because they're resonating with that vibration. So if you're feeling really agitated and guilty and anxious that you're not being good enough, then that's what the baby's going to pick up on. And the baby doesn't need us to be there all the time. And if we allow the baby to adapt to them having their own space and time not to be interacted with, then that actually serves everybody, because the baby needs that too. And of course, if we condition them into thinking that they're not okay unless we're really interacting with them, then they'll always ask for it. So if we condition them to it, it sounds like a bad word to say condition, but it's like create an environment and the child will adapt to it, because children are incredibly adaptable. So if you allow them the opportunity to adapt to spending time without direct contact or engagement, and you in a peaceful state nearby, that serves both mama and baby.
Yeah. But what would you say, how do babies and children in general understand that they are being loved? Because I really think that we as human beings, we are made for experiencing love and also other emotions, but love is this primary emotion and feeling and everything that is connected to it. And how would you say that they kind of get this feeling of being, or how do they understand that we love them? They obviously don't speak, they don't, they just lie down and they're just being there. So how do they understand it? And what would you say, what's the difference between a baby or, let's say, a toddler or a teenager? What's the difference of this being loved experience, and how that they really feel that they are being loved?
Well, beautiful question. I think with babies, and this goes for toddlers and young children, is that they are wonderful at perceiving the world, but not necessarily interpreting it. So they will, a soft, loving touch, they will perceive that as a soft, loving touch, and kind, loving words, they'll perceive those as kind, loving words. They can't interpret the words or understand the exact meaning of them, but they're perceiving a feeling, and they will perceive that very accurately. Children know when a parent isn't okay, but they won't understand why the parent's not okay. So I think it's really handy to always remember that. And my child will perceive what's going on here, and let's say they're older and they perceive there's an argument, there's tension, there's something that doesn't feel safe, but they have no idea of interpreting why that argument is happening. So it's useful to remember that children have that strong innate ability to perceive the situation. And I think as children age, the way they know they're loved is by being understood. And I think it's a funny thing, it kind of gets overlooked, like really deeply knowing your child. People don't talk about that. They talk about loving their children, but not knowing their children. And yet, when you listen really hard, when you look at the big picture and you know your child, you know exactly what your child needs. You know when to engage with them. You know when to leave them alone. You know how they need to fall asleep, whether it's very gently or whether they need to just go crazy before bed. You know how they like to eat their food. And if you show respect and understanding, that's when the child feels really deeply safe. They know they can trust in that relationship, and they feel understood, because there's nothing more powerful than feeling understood by somebody who cares for you. And I think that's how children of all ages recognize love. And I think for teenagers, that it's really challenging for parents to know their teenager, because their teenager is changing so much, and the teenager doesn't understand themselves necessarily at that point. So it's harder for the adult too. But teenagers really need us to work hard to understand them, because they need that love, more than ever, even though it looks the opposite.
Yeah. So basically what you're saying, we really need to get to know our children. They are not, the same as we are. It's all about, discovering how they feel, discovering what kind of person they are, what they enjoy, not to have this fixed ideas on that we tend to make in our heads, what's the best thing for them and what they should do, but rather, I step back and just be, as you said beautifully, an observer, and really, I get this feeling like getting to know them, who they really are. It's just in a way, and this really blends beautifully with the statement I love, and I know I've said it lots of times, that it really takes a child to raise a parent, and that's basically what all this is about. And there being this beautiful, fantastic teachers that really teach us how to be. And this is what I really love about them, and how they are, really changing our world. So what about, how do we as parents in a way manage our mind? A lot of times parents are facing maybe financial struggles, maybe they are having some problems at work or something, it's going on in their lives. And we all know how important this is, not to feel that way. And because, as you said, children will absorb everything. They are just these big antennas that are actually mostly communicating without words, and just by the pure state of being. And as the whole body, it's really picking up all this information and vibrations out of the environment. So how do we in a way manage our minds to stay calm, not to worry in a way? Or is this really necessary? Because in a way, you said we don't need to fix our children's feelings and emotions and what do they feel. Isn't that just being a way of life, that things happen, that stress happen, emotions happen? So what would you say about, these two things?
Well, I wanted to come back to what you said about it takes a child to raise a parent. And I remember when my first daughter was very tiny, and I was talking to somebody, and I said, so you're saying, really follow my child's lead? And she laughed her head off, and she said, well, who else's lead would you follow? Like, your child will tell you everything you'll ever need to know in all their different languages. There's nothing else to go on. So I'm like, oh yes, it's so obvious, so beautiful.
Isn't it amazing and fascinating how everything is just in front of our eyes, and we are so blind to see? I just had this revelation few minutes before our interview, how actually my daughter likes to be in a way touched, and how when she is kind of connecting, she really wants me to touch her all the time. So if she's saying something, I really need to touch her and look deep into her eyes, so that she knows that I'm really listening, that I'm engaging. So and there are so many things that are really in front of our eyes, and and they are really communicating. They're so obvious, but sometimes we're so blind to see. So yeah. So we were just saying about the emotions and how we don't need to fix them, but in other ways we say we really need to be this calm parent. And so this is in a way, those two arguments are in a way conflicting with each other. So in a way, we need to be a calm parent, not to transfer all this to our child. But on the other hand, they really need to learn. They really need to know that this is life. What do you think about that?
Well, I we can't be calm all the time. So I'm always very keen to, because there's a big movement towards gentle parenting, and my only concern is that parents will feel like they have to be gentle all of the time. But we're human. We don't feel gentle all of the time. We're going to mess up. We're going to shout. We're going to do things we're not proud of. And it's how we repair the connection if we've damaged it in some way, and how authentic and vulnerable we can be with our children, so they can trust that we're open-hearted.
Yeah.
But in terms of how we care for ourselves emotionally and what we model to our children, then I think just the most beautifully simple idea in the world. It's not an idea, it's truth, is the nature of thought. So we live in a thought created reality. Like we're thought in the moment. That's all we are. So when we notice, when we just keep noticing, oh, I'm feeling anxious about this, or oh, look at that, there it is again. I'm feeling anxious about this, and then you can notice, oh, I was in the same situation with my child yesterday, but I didn't feel anxious. And it's like, oh, look at that, isn't that amazing? And the more we notice, the more we can be kind of the witness to the experience, and we don't get caught up in the story. Because I think that with children, it's really easy to get caught up in the story. And yesterday my daughter was very upset about something, and started to make reasons why it was happening, and it was going deeper and deeper into the story. And I noticed, I was wanting to go on that journey with her, and the story was getting bigger and more dramatic, and we were feeding it. And I just noticed, oh, look at me, I don't need to do that. And I just have to stop and say, okay, what's sitting beneath the story? Oh, okay. So she's just, it's something about belonging that's up for her right now. Okay, and that's it. And I totally trust that she can handle that and move through that. And so not being afraid of our own feelings and showing our children that we're not afraid of our own feelings, I think, is like the biggest gift we can give our children. Because the moment we start to judge ourselves for being upset or tearful or for being angry, and anger sometimes is a really appropriate response. But if we're afraid of those feelings and we show our children, oh, I shouldn't cry, or I should never get angry, then the message we're giving our children is some emotions are good and some emotions are bad, and you don't want the bad ones. And if you have those, that's a bit of a problem. Whereas actually it's really great, because young children don't judge emotions. That to them, all emotions are equally welcome, which is why they're so uninhibited around having strong emotions in public. They don't judge them to be good or bad, but we tell them which ones are good and bad. And so, I think that is so valuable. Like, all emotions are welcome, and a lot of parents say to me, oh, but I don't want to upset my child. Like, my child's anxious, and so I don't want to make it worse by upsetting them. And so what that generally translates as is that they're not saying no to the child. They're not holding the boundary. And children need to hear no sometimes. That's the appropriate thing from the adult who has a bigger perspective on a situation and more experience and knows what's safe. And so sometimes the no is really appropriate. And I think it's important children sometimes hear that. And yes, they might be disappointed, they might be upset. But if we judge on their behalf, oh, you can't handle that, I think we do them a real disservice. I think it's really important children experience disappointment and upset, and see for themselves, oh, I handled that. I'm really fine. And that's how they become resilient, is that they meet these disappointments and they meet these upsets, and they grow resilience as a result, within obviously a very loving environment where nobody's shaming them or blaming them. So I'm really passionate about allowing children the full range of feeling, not judging them, and not being afraid of them. Usually we try and fix feelings not because the child's uncomfortable about them, but because we are. The child who's having a big tantrum and is screaming and is angry or sad, the reason we want to stop it is not because they have a problem with it. They're fine. They're in their experience. They're free having their experience. But it's we want to stop it because we feel uncomfortable. We're afraid of that. So we try and manage tantrums. It's like we don't have to. All we have to do is respect them for what they are, which is an age appropriate response. neurologically triggered, and we just hold the space. Hold.
So what you're saying basically is we just leave the children to, in a way, deal with emotions themselves, to really, in a way, go that they are really, in a way, going deep into an emotion themselves, and that we really don't need to, in a way, teach them how to deal with them, because maybe the way I'm dealing with emotions, it's not what would suit my daughter. So what would you say? Would you agree that we really, in a way, we can guide them and we can be there for them and be there and offer them support? But do we really need to, in a way, actively teach them how to deal with them? Or are we just, stepping back and just be, in a way, this, in a way, validating their emotions? And, just by doing so, we help them to, to just go through this and just to learn.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the way we learn best is by experiencing something for ourselves, and that's how we learn how to deal with something or meet something. So I think, how we model, how we manage our feelings, or how we respond to our feelings, or how comfortable we are with our feelings, that's probably the single most powerful thing we can do in terms of teaching. But children, I mean, we have this innate wisdom. Children innately know what to do with their feelings. They show us that from a really young age, but we generally don't quite see it because we get caught up in the story and we get caught up in our own thinking about it, triggered. And if we see the child's experience, we can see they are really, really fine handling their feelings. And they always come back to innate well-being, always. They go away and they come back, they go away and they come back. And they come back to well-being without us doing anything. And generally, they come back to their well-being when we don't do anything. It's when we step in and we try to change it and fix it and make them better or make them think differently, that they stay, out of alignment for longer. So it's that other case of, stepping back and doing less and being more, because they know what to do. It's magic. I mean, we all do. We just get conditioned out of believing that we know what to do.
But is it possible at all to feel comfortable with our negative emotions and feelings?
Well, I think it is really possible if from a young age there's no judgment from other people that there's something wrong with those feelings. And I think we give children all sorts of confusing messages. When we tell children they must apologize, even when they don't feel remorseful or apologetic, we're actually steering the child away from their innate knowing, their innate wisdom. We're saying to them, you don't have a feeling, but we're telling you that you should be having that feeling. And that's really confusing for a child who's told, you have to apologize, you should feel sorry. And the child's thinking, well, I don't feel sorry.
Yeah.
I should be, because my parent, my all-knowing parent is saying to me, you should be sorry and you need to apologize now. And the child's thinking, well, I'm not sorry, and why aren't I feeling that feeling? And maybe there's something wrong with me because I'm not feeling that feeling. There's nothing wrong with the child. We impose. Actually, when we do that, we're asking the child to lie, and that's not right. That's not fair on the child, because we're steering them away from their knowing. And if we leave children to move, to be authentic in their feelings, they'll most likely connect with that feeling of remorse, and they may feel impelled to say sorry, but it won't be in the precise moment the adult wants it. And the adult usually wants the apology to make everything feel more comfortable, not because it's authentically there.
So if a child hits someone, how should we react?
It depends how old the child is.
Let's say we have a 3-year-old and we have like a 6-year-old. Let's say, just two.
Your 3-year-old has no impulse control at that point. So your 3-year-old who hits out and hitting aggression it comes from fear. It's like, I don't know what's going on in the situation. The child's overwhelmed. The amygdala, which is hypersensitive, goes, releases all those chemicals. The child hits out, and then the child feels bad, because children really, really don't want to hurt other people. They feel bad that, you know, that they potentially then receive some blaming and shaming for what they've done, which makes them more defended, which makes it look like they really don't care, when actually inside they're like, no, I didn't want to do that and I feel bad. And so they don't feel understood, because they're being made wrong for something that was totally out of their control. I mean, literally not in their control to understand what's happening in that moment. So that child needs lots of connection, you know, the right brain to right brain behaviors. That child needs some really empathetic eye contact, and some nurturing touch, and some holding, and connecting, and some presence. But usually the child will get told off or made wrong, which then makes it worse. And so you have a child who's even more frightened because they've done something. Now they feel worse, and then of course they're going to hit again, because, you know, that's the cycle. And with the older children, you know, sometimes children develop it as a strategy to hit out, even when they have impulse control. And I really feel for those children, because we know we have strategies until we find new ones. And so until that child's found a new one, they're kind of stuck with the lashing out strategy, and they probably know, oh, this doesn't work, but they just don't know what else to do. And so, but you know, whatever the age, nobody feels good about hurting someone else. You know, children have such an innate sense of justice. They know, oh, I wish I hadn't done that. And then, you know, how do they go back from there? It's really hard on them. So they need lots of empathy and connection. And when they're, you know, when things have calmed down in the brain, later on, you can have that conversation with their logical brain and say, oh, you know, in that situation in the future, I wonder how we could do that differently, and invite the child to come up with ideas so that you can potentially prevent it happening in the future. You know, the child might say, well, I just find it really like it's too much when we go to the ball pit in the soft play at the end of school, because I'm really tired. So children, they're creative geniuses. They'll come up with their own solutions if we invite them to.
So it comes down to communication, right? And again, to understanding them. And I really would love to empower all the parents that when such a behavior is happening, it usually means that there is something too much. I always like to say, even if we have a baby with colic, and I really love to explain it. You know, I don't know if there was, I didn't found any research on that, but I really believe that the brain is so actually, I wouldn't say not developed well when the baby is born, but has so many open connections, and it does do connections, but also has this super sensory perceptions in a way. And when there is too much, and usually when the mother is not feeling well, when there is really too much going on, it's almost like we're having a stressful day, and then we come home from work, and then you have your husband there, and of course he is guilty for everything. So you really need to, you know, you really need to kind of filter yourself, you know, vent with, you know, just saying things to him, and just in a way kind of, you know, just release this stress and all these things. And usually we do feel sorry afterwards. We all do. So it's the same with colic. If the baby has colic, or hitting someone or something, or having this behavior, because there's usually too much, and the brain really needs the reset. And this is a way of releasing. This is I think this is the easiest and the fastest way to release, because this young brain is not doesn't know how to self-regulate, doesn't know how to, regulate the emotions and everything. So in that way, this is the most effective way. And this is what I would really love all our viewers and our parents out there to realize. So in that way, you can really understand your children more. And this is also something, this is also in a way a connection to understand why these behaviors actually arise. Just before we go, we were talking about how to live, the personal authority as a mother, as a woman, and how attachment parenting can really help. And I would really love this message to be, to be spread among all of our viewers. So what would you say about that?
Oh, well, that small, quiet voice within, which every parent has, we all have all the wisdom we'll ever need inside of us. And it's just listening. And what lots of parents tell me is that when they came across the attachment parenting community, they suddenly realized that there are other people with the same voice. And so there's all this information, this cultural information telling them one thing, but their instinct and that little voice was telling them something else. And to meet other parents who were listening too was very empowering. Women said, for the first time, I'm realizing that I am making decisions which are really high stake decisions. These are life and death decisions, because this is about my baby's life. My baby is 100% dependent on me, and I'm making decisions for the benefit of my baby, and I'm making them because I have complete and utter trust in my ability to know what's correct for my baby, despite all the other information. And a lot of that information will support their choices, and increasingly the science supporting their choices. So it's incredibly validating. But often a new piece of research will come out and mothers will say, we've known this all along, but it's great. Thank you for the scientific validation.
Yeah. Sometimes we just need that to believe ourselves, right?
It does help. It supports it when you're sharing information with people who don't know about it, where it's just new to them.
Yeah, so it's a wonderful and really powerful message. So just before, we really need to end soon this beautiful interview and this amazing and so deep conversation, so profound. Just tell us before you go, you prepared a little something, a little gift for our viewers. What did you prepare?
So we have our online positive discipline course, which we created for parents and professionals. So lots of childminders and nursery workers also do the course. It's a 10-module course. It involves videos, reflection questions, a parenting style questionnaire, so you can discover your style. And then we go into all the hot topics. So like brain development. Beautiful. What is discipline? Because a lot of people think discipline is punitive. So we're looking at discipline as like a force for good. It's you're a guide, you're a teacher, and coming from the Latin word disciple.
Yes.
So and we look at setting boundaries, tantrums and strong emotions, power struggles, rewards, encouragement. We look at praise and punishment, siblings, aggression, and lots more. And there's quizzes at the end to really embed your understanding. So, and we're offering a 50% discount on our course for everyone watching the summit.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for being my guest and for really participating and really show us the way the attachment parenting can really help and empower not just parents but also our children, our babies, right from the start. Thank you, McHale, so much. It really was an honor and a pleasure to do this interview with you.
No, the pleasure was mine. Thank you.
And for all parents out there who are watching us, thank you so much for being here. And if you have any questions, if there is any support we can offer you during the summit or even afterwards, just feel free to email and we will do our best to serve you further. So thank you so much. Bye-bye.